Well, I reckon we can have a we've been talking about this wonderful CD, and I reckon we'll need to sample something. So now, one of the tracks you devoted to your piano teacher, I noticed there, or she gets a Guernsey. Yeah. So
Would you like a bit of CW there?
I did. I could hear that.
That's AM, FM, TM. That's the name of the track. Which stands for amplitude modulation, frequency modulation, and time modulation.
Time modulation.
And, I just came up with that idea, right? And then I thought, okay, let's do some examples of that, but make them interesting. So I tried to make it musical.
Which you succeeded.
The first part, don't forget, everything you're hearing is sounds created by the electronics.
Yeah.
So I wanted to simulate what it sounds like on shortwave radio with the static and the hum and the noise, and then a Morse code signal fading in and out. And I did that at the beginning.
Ethereal.
And that's the very primitive form of AM, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's excellent. Well, what we can do, we can play that on the transition, because we're going to zoom out. We'll need to zoom out and re-zoom in the next 10 minutes. So we can probably do that while we're playing it. So, it got two parts. It goes to the FM.
3 parts.
Oh, 3 parts. Sorry. Yes, that's right.
Yep, AM, FM, and
TM, time modulation. So,
With the FM, there's something interesting happening in there. I mean, there's quite a few examples of FM, and I really create some raucous noise. I'm a fan of noise. I think you can understand that, Steve. The art of noise is pretty special.
Right. That's it.
And I found a way to make the most raucous noise where you take a pure signal and then you frequency modulate it, so that's like vibrato. If you speed the vibrato up, that becomes a harsh sound.
Yeah.
So you take that harsh sound and then apply a vibrato to that.
Yes.
And so now you've got a couple of levels of FM, haven't you? Then you can speed that up, and that creates another harsh sound.
Yep.
So then you add vibrato to that. So now you're about 4 levels deep in frequency.
That's right.
You got up to 5 levels according to the
That's a megawobulation, isn't it?
I wound up the rates of frequency modulation to the point where it starts to sound like tape machine, like a tape recorder, playing a piece of music back when you're rewinding the tape back over the heads. Have you heard of that effect?
Yes.
I couldn't believe it. This instrument's sounds like a tape machine.
Yes.
How did it do that?
Yay. Well,
I reckon you can keep on. You keep on finding new sounds to make with a synth like that.
You do. You discover them when you play with it, really.
Yeah.
And you think, right, there's a great sound. I'll find a way to use that somewhere.
See,
that's part of the invention.
You don't have a memory that you can. You'd have to remember your settings, I guess, wouldn't you?
Well, it's in the wetware, isn't it, Frank?
True. There is that.
I haven't heard that term for a long time.
No.
Okay, so do you think negative synthesis is more creatively amenable than positive synthesis?
Subtractive synthesis.
Yes, subtractive.
Look, I'm a bit biased, I think, Steve. Yep. I grew up with these sounds, and I got obsessed when I first started hearing things like Switched On Bach, and then later, one of my heroes is Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And he was really the reason why I built this instrument. I was just so obsessed with the incredible sound that he was creating, something that just was out of this world, off this planet. And I thought, I've got to understand how that works. The curiosity in me took over, and I started building things when I was a teenager and never stopped, really. So that's where it comes from.
It's fantastic.
To me, it's more organic, I think it's an organic sound, analog synthesis.
Sure.
Steve, have you heard of a Japanese synthesis called Iso Tomita?
Oh, of course. I've got several albums of his, Frank.
To me, he is the most sensitive, inventive synthesist that I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
The pictures at an exhibition is one of the
Oh, yes. I played that on one of the missions a while ago. Tomita. He wrote a lot of orchestral stuff too.
We
things
love
like the whistler sound,
superb,
and the humming Cossacks. Oh, that's incredible!
Wonderful,
incredible
stuff.
what he's done there.
Yeah.
And was he using a Moog or an EMC or something?
Yes.
I think he used a lot of other things as well, didn't he?
Well, a lot of Japanese-made stuff too, because they were building things under license by then.
They were. They had, and they were putting out commercial synths.
The Japanese take a standard Moog and they put it in a fire and then they fold it 500 times. So what that does is it gives it a hard and definitive sound, very sharp.
Very sharp. That's right. It's called
you're good value, Wayne. You're good value.
It's called Bond synth. It's called.
That's it. Yeah.
I love it. All right, folks. Well, we've got 7 minutes before we can, and we'll time the track on the transition. So give us a bit more.
Give us a music transition. We can transition while we're listening on radio.
Transmute. Well,
Transmute.
Yes, that's right. So, any other further comment on this particular track on the AM/FM TM? And
time modulation is playing with a delay line, that echo box, the smaller one on the top that you see there, Steve.
Yep.
And that's got multiple delay lines. Some of them are very short delays. Some are delays that can go up to 2 seconds. And so I'm frequency modulating a voltage-controlled oscillator that is changing the delay time of the delay module. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I'm playing around with sine waves doing the frequency modulation of that oscillator, and then I'm switching between that to square waves, and then I'm trying sawtooth waves, and you'll hear that create distortions of the little repetitive arpeggio that's fed into the delay line. You hear that being chopped around and shifted around, and nothing's stable in time. That's for the experiment I was playing with.
Yeah, that's really great.
Steve, is the delay unit an analog unit, or is that digital?
There is bucket brigade devices in it. I suppose you call that semi-digital, don't you?
Semi-digital, yeah.
There is also, to get the 2 second delay, Frank, there is a couple of devices called the Princeton technology. They're these karaoke chips. In a single chip, you get very good quality audio with up to about a second delay coming out of it. And that's fully voltage controllable. So that's a brilliant little chip that came on the market. That's analog? Yeah. Well, it's they sample the waveform and then put it into a memory and drop it in and out of a memory. So it's a little bit of a digital aspect.
If they're sampling it, I guess it's not analog, is it? Anyway, who cares? It sounds terrific.
Oh, look, this is fascinating. I really enjoy the descriptions. It's just great to get some background into how it all comes together.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I tell you what, we've only got a few minutes, 5 minutes.
You'll only get halfway through that track, Steve.
Well, we'll give it a go.
Can we all listen on radio? So
I think so. Yeah, so if we're happy to listen in on the wireless, then you can hear what's going on. And I hope we don't get any of that phase cancellation, because I don't have to. I can play it in stereo.
I think this particular track doesn't use a lot of that reverb springs and that anti-phase stuff.
Okay, all right. In that case, we'll keep it.
Okay.
Keep a nice solid mono, and but I can easily switch into stereo if need be. Well, that being the case, we'll cut to the chase. We'll have a listen to AM/FM TM, written by Mr. Stephen Bentley, who's our guest tonight. And we'll just cue this up. I've got to find track number 5.
Do we sign out here, Steve?
I'll end the call and then invite you all back in. So I'll just do I do that? Maybe we just maybe I do need to invite you back in. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Let's drop out, and then I will the call should
in the same way.
Yeah,
and then
I think
see what happens.
Yeah, I think you just come in the same way, because I just have to restart it. I think that's the way.
And if it doesn't work,
I'll just start again.
You'll know pretty soon it hasn't worked.
It's easy.
And we can then.
Yeah, absolutely. So tune in your wirelesses, folks. We are about to kick off. I just have to get the right CD player.
I'm on.
And this is VK3sl testing.
Yes, we're back.
What do you think, Frank?
I love it. I love it.
See what happens when you take a little pattern of notes and then you start messing with time.
I know. It's just what I'm appreciating is I'm finding the more I listen to this, the more I'm hearing. So I'm going to have to listen a lot more times before I take it all in.
It'll send you slightly mad, I think.
That's all to the good, I think. I haven't got far to go, so complete the process. No, I'm loving it, Steve. I'm loving it. There's so much detail.
I'm very glad.
Yeah,
I honestly do. I'm
Frank.
not just sort of saying it for the sake of.
Well, it's not like the jazz and the classical stuff that you're often playing there with Steve.
No, look, it's another world. It's another soundscape, and look,
we do play, or Steve does play synthesizer stuff a bit.
Well, when I first started doing these missions, I was mainly concentrating on some of the early, pioneers of synthesizers. We looked at a number of female composers, and Elaine Radic and Delia Derbyshire and Kiani and others. And
are you familiar with that stuff, Steve?
Oh, yes, yeah.
And
Delia Derbyshire didn't have the benefit of a synthesizer. She did it with tape and sound effects and manipulating tape. What a job.
Imagine how time-consuming that would be.
Incredible, Frank.
It is.
Yes, absolutely.
What a woman.
Incredible. Yeah, so there are a number of remarkable pioneers, and I thought it was worth celebrating their exploits, and that was one of the reasons I did this to start with. But I never know much about the mechanics of it, and I've never been at the coalface. And we did electronic music module at uni when I was at Melbourne Uni back in the 80s, and it was with tape, and you had the EMC 100, I think it was then, that crappy old machine, and Synthi 100, I think it was, and
yes, what was the name of the EMS?
EMS, that's right.
Electromagnetic system.
That's right.
Music systems. They're British.
Yeah, it was enormous.
Let me tell you about a couple of things that the instrument does. Can I do that?
Yeah, please do.
Please.
Yeah, I'm most interested to hear.
Well, it all begins with the sound source, doesn't it? So there are
how many oscillators?
Well, there's only 4 in it, Frank. 4.
Are there only?
So,
you're getting a lot of mileage out of 4 oscillators.
And each oscillator can generate a sine wave, a triangle wave, a sawtooth waveform, which can be forward or reverse sawtooth, and a square wave, which can have the adjustable duty cycle, so it can be turned into a pulse wave.
Yes.
There's also a noise generator. In fact, there's 2 noise generators in there. They're both random, pseudo-random binary sequence noise generators.
Yeah.
And I modified the original design so that it had an extra switch to become a low-frequency noise source. And this only generates noise below 30 cycles per second, 30
Oh,
hertz.
yeah, that's what you used for that big explosion that you had in the
No, not quite, no.
No?
So you can have white noise or pink noise. Pink noise is that low-pass filtered noise, 3 dB per octave slope.
Yep.
White noise is the full spectrum. But I was interested in extracting out that component below 30 hertz and amplifying that up. So I put a filter in there and an amplifier to do that. And that became something I've never heard before on any other analog synthesizer, was what you can do with that subsonic noise source.
It's more felt than heard, isn't it? It's like a vibration.
If you modulate, you heard some of it in that last piece, in the FM side of it. It sort of sounds like bubbling and turbulence.
Bubble.
And in the great Nebula track, there are things that come through the headphones there or in the speaker system that sound like birds chirping,
Yeah.
It can also be used for rumbles and earthquake sounds. You're quite right.
It's terrific. One thing you did that I really loved. Sorry, I've cut you off.
No, that's all right. That's what I wanted to mention. That's the sound sources. So you all begin with that and you then work from there.
One thing that you did that I picked up on was that you were playing with some white noise and filtering it to the point where eventually you filtered it down to a sine wave. And
that's the track the fog rolls in.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
That's a metaphor, by the way. That track is a metaphor.
Yes.
Have you?
I don't believe that at all. I can feel the fog actually roll in on me.
He's got a very vivid imagination.
Does anyone
I
get
thought
it?
I thought to myself, this is called the fog rolls in, and it just now makes all sense.
Well, I describe it in text. You know what it's about. There's sort of a bit of prose there. But do you get what it's about? Does it make any sense to anyone?
Yeah,
Have you figured it out?
My wife read me all the stuff, obviously, and she said, "What a vivid imagination!"
Yeah, absolutely.
Has Steve got?
Well, I can read it out for you. Do you want me to paraphrase? I can read.
Go ahead.
Do it.
Yeah, please.
So the fog rolls in. So it says, Steve writes, creative thoughts arrive and coalesce. A thread develops and winds itself into a new and jolly garment. Ideas flood in, pulsing, gyrating, swirling and dancing. Substances propel the cognitive momentum ever forward, building a scaffold around the emerging monument. Scraping, gouging and nailing it down, the creation takes on a solidified form. Then the fog rolls in. Glimpses of the form only appear briefly towards the conclusion, but much becomes obscured. Eventually everything is delusional. I love it. The scaffold collapses and thoughts slump and decline into fumbling, bumbling, mumbling and slumbering. Wow. Fantastic.
Kathy loved that.
Do you get it?
Yeah.
Do you get it? Come on, Wayne, what do you think it is?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but you ought to read Jack McDevitt. He writes science fiction, and you've just described the meeting on a foreign world of a monument left by an alien race where they first go to it. He stands there. These people didn't exist. They don't exist in our lifetime, but they've gone to all these worlds and they leave monuments of unusual things, and people will travel there and wonder and go, like art. You see people in art galleries going,
yes.
I'm not quite sure where you were coming from, and I'm not quite sure that I'm qualified to answer, so I'm interested in hearing.
I thought I gave it away with the part of that prose, Steve, and I explained it by saying substances propel the cognitive momentum.
I get the feeling it is to do with having taken some recreational chemicals.
You got it, Frank.
Substance abuse.
You start out with a good idea, you work on it, it gets better and better, and then you just destroy it by taking too much.
Yes, that threshold.
Well done. Yeah,
That was the concept that I was trying to express.
Yes,
And that's where the nice little melody, and I came up with that melody by spending hours and hours experimenting with the sequencer.
Yes.
And I really loved that melody, and I found that once it began and you then added a delay to it, the delay created a counter melody. And I was just completely hypnotized by this fantastic sound. I manipulated with the filter and so that it flows
It really
in and out.
transmutes.
It is good, but then it starts getting washed away with the noise.
Yes,
And,
yes.
So it is into the mud.
It does. It all,
Well,
as you say,
I've made some notes. If you'd like to, I have 4 points. Firstly, at the beginning, I felt like Dr. Charles Foreman walking through Colossus. If you remember the movie,
no.
Anyone remember the movie? Well, they built this giant supercomputer, which was housed in a mountain, and it was to run the world. And when they turned it on, it basically got in touch with the Russian supercomputer, said that the humans weren't to be trusted, and put us all into slavery.
Okay.
But when he walked,
that's not deep thought.
at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
Pardon me.
That's not deep thought.
Sorry, Steve.
That's not deep thought.
No. That's a different imagination.
Like his guide.
Yeah. This is quite dark.
Yeah.
The second was, I thought you had the theremin influence in there, and I thought to myself, I could see you almost with a theremin on the side playing. But, of course, it's all done with your oscillators. But do you like the theremin? Have you experimented with that?
Oh, it's a beautiful instrument, absolutely, and it's a challenge to play it. But I'm actually performing a lot of these things too. You know, I'm performing them. I do mix them later and then edit things out. But a lot of the sequences are being performed live.
In real time.
Twiddling knobs. And, you know, I'm twiddling knobs like crazy and flicking switches. There's a piece there, the subject of the industrial complex.
Yeah.
Yes, that's track 3, I think.
Yes,
Part 3 of that, which I called Boiled Frog, that's the melodic section.
Yes, Boiled Frog.
At the beginning of that, I'm actually flicking switches on the sequencer
in real
build
time.
up the melody in real time.
In real time, wow.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. I think
Let me tell you a little bit about that sequencer too, Steve.
Yeah.
They came out in the early 70s when the Moog synthesizer came along.
Yep.
And they were intended to voltage control oscillators to create melodies, which is what it does. And there's a company called Sequential Circuits that made lots of them, you know, and they're still around on the market if you look them up secondhand. But the way they did it back in those days, they just had a pot, a variable resistor to set the voltage between 0 and 5 volts, which was your 5-octave range for the tuning of the oscillator. And so you had to tune up each step as an analog voltage to create a particular pitch. How tedious would that have been, Steve, to create a melody that was on the correct tempered scale?
I know, it's unbelievable.
Well, I said, I'm not going to have a bar of that. So I designed my own system, which has got a 5-octave switch, so it switches 5 octaves, and then it's got a 12-set switch to switch each of the semitones.
Yeah, what a good idea.
You get precise pitch.
You would, and you're not mucking around with all those variables. Although the variables,
that's terrific. Sequential Circuits made the profit.
Yeah, but I do have a thing about creative intonation as well. But that's another topic. But I think it's fantastic. Look, shall we have a listen to the Fog Rolls In? It goes for just a few minutes.
Yes, please.
And we've just been talking.
I could sit back and listen to that for ages.
I've just taken the pills.
Yes, okay. Good on you, Frank.
Go for it, Frank. Good on you.
Well, this is... okay, well, we've got track 3 lined up to go. Have a listen.
Steve.
I think it must have. Because it's still going.
You hear what? Left and right channels eliminating each other.
Isn't that amazing? Does it come back again? I wonder.
It's still there.
I'm playing it in stereo now.
There it is.
But you only get modern.
I think that's amazing.
That's almost total.
Well, it is 180 degrees phase shift, and it doesn't go over well on AM radio, does it? And unfortunately, you lost the counter melody when the delay came in at the beginning.
Yeah.
That counter melody was lost. Oh, what a shame!
Yeah, it's a pity.
Fog rolled in on this one.
Yeah, look, it's just the nature of things, isn't it? I mean, look, unless you did have a set tune to 147, 475 and another to 1865, 1868, then you could experience it.
Yeah, I wonder if you get a
I did think of remixing this album for a mono version. You know, that was quite common back in the late 60s.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too hard to do, would it?
There was a transition between, mono records, and then the stereo LP came out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of the artists back then were producing 2 copies of their album, mono and a stereo.
Yeah, it wouldn't be too hard to do, would it?
Oh, Frank. Well, I've still got all the original patches and, all the original masters on the computer over there. So
yeah, if you think about some of the tracks, especially the ones that do have that phase cancellation, it'd be nice to be able to experience them. I mean, it's an incredible effect. I mean, hearing it now.
I think it is too. I think it is too.
You could put some new material and call it Volume 2. You know.
Yeah.
Steve, have you considered laying down a backing track to that of some description? So an underlying beat, a harmony, whatever, because you're in trip-hop area here. So you've sort of, you've got the melodic, you've got your synth happening, but then you put that underlying track. Think, I don't know whether you know the bands, but think bands like Massive Attack. It's very trip-hop, so you've got something underneath it, and then you play your...
it's like a multi-layered thing,
composition over Yeah, I don't know the name for it. Yeah, it's a multi-layered thing. So you get that thing. And now the example I'd use is, do you remember, what was her name? Suzanne Vega did...
Yes, I do. My name is Luca. Yeah, I love that. I love her.
And then
still going.
10 years later, a group came along. I can't remember their name, but they put a track underneath it. All of a sudden, it was number one again.
Oh, right.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
so
terrific.
there's 2 versions, the original version, which is completely a cappella, and then this new version where they've laid down this track beneath it, and it completely changed the tone of it, but retained the sense, the meaning. But it also brought it to a new audience.
I guess it would. But it's a beaut song on its own. Another thing you can do, and I'm hoping to do when I get my little studio going, is to play with loops and superimpose loops on loops in an ordered musical way, and see how that works out.
You can work.
I've got some recordings by Philip Glass, where this saxophone player was exactly doing that. It was playing a pattern into the recording, which then was delayed by anything up to 10 seconds.
Yes.
And then when the delay starts to play back what it was previously playing, he would then do a harmony along with his previous recording.
Yeah.
And then add to that. And it just kept overlapping like that for about 20 minutes. It was incredibly
It can be very effective if you get the timing right and you understand the technology. I've seen people do that live with strings.
I've been playing with some apps on iPhone, which is what's called, it's been called generative music. And you put in maybe a 2-4 bar melody, and it kind of plays with it and there's a certain amount of randomness in it, but there's also, it also produces quite a bit of musicality owing to the algorithm, particular algorithm that's controlling it. Brian Eno originally sort of invented this style of thing, and it's most interesting to get the effects.
Yeah, it sort of invents itself, doesn't it? Really,
It does, more or less, but in a way, an unpredictable way, and it surprises you when it turns out, as it sometimes does, turns out really musical.
Yeah, but you do have some control parameters on it too.
You have control, yes, and if you keep feeding in new 4-bar phrases, it kind of refreshes it and stops it from getting into a rut.
Yeah, sure. That's interesting. And they sort of they layer up, don't they?
Yes, they layer up. That's right. That's right.
So can you do a reduction as well? Can you simplify the texture? Can you cancel layers, or can you subtract? Or
not that I know of. No, there's a lot. You wish you had a lot more control over it.
Yeah.
But it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's good.
And I'm learning about how you can actually get more control if you know how to work it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's
anyway, that's another story. But
well, let's hear more. Yeah, so go on. Yeah.
Yeah, let's go for some more.
Yeah.
No, you'd had enough.
No, not at all. No,
we're just getting started.
No, this is absolutely the case. It's there's so much in this project, and so tell us, Steve. I was wondering, early days. When did you start? You built the thing and started building it in '74. It's been work in progress. Did you do much?
I was a student at RMIT studying engineering.
Yep.
And I then had access, of course, at that stage to the engineering library, which is extensive. And so I could get some really good articles and magazines for free because I was an impoverished student back then.
Yep.
And so I was researching all of this psychoacoustic stuff and synthesis stuff. And I even got I've still got it. I've got a copy of the original paper written by Robert Moog as how he designed his early synthesizer.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing.
And I learned about the principles of synthesis of speech. And I was in the Faculty of Communication Engineering in those days. And the chief of engineering, Bob Lord, he was one of the first of the pioneers developing synthetic speech.
Yeah.
I think there's a YouTube film of him doing something on...
Yeah. And these days it's taken for granted. It's on everything, isn't it? But that was pioneering days where they were concatenating phonemes together and things like that.
Yep.
It's always... that's right.
I remember him demonstrating it to in a lecture class one day, and he had some speakers up there, and he was replaying some of these recordings where they had the thing say a sentence.
Yeah.
And most of us laughed our heads off because it was unintelligible. It wasn't English, although it was supposed to be. And it just sounded like you were at a bowling alley, with someone who's bowling. I don't know what it was.
We've come a long way.
Announcing the number 4 to Burwood.
Yes.
Anyway, those principles got used on the title track of this album.
Wow.
I looked up all the required frequencies and amplitudes for the different phonemes to create the sound of that A or an I or an O.
Yeah.
And I then experimented for hours and hours and hours creating samples of speech, sound, and then I put that track together. And that's one of the reasons why it's the title track, because so much blood, sweat and tears went into that track.
Okay. Yeah, that's terrific. and that filter, or the filter that you have, I suppose it's more than one filter to get all of the vowel sounds, is amazing.
Well, I've got a bank of 4 voltage-controlled filters, and the filters can be configured as low pass or band pass.
Yeah.
And you've also got a frequency control, but also a Q adjustment. So you can change...
the resonance and emphasis.
And if you push it too far, it'll actually become an oscillator. So it's also a pseudo sine wave voltage controlled oscillator as well.
Yeah.
So yes, Frank, I was adjusting like a bank of 3 of them in parallel, going into a mixer, setting up the frequencies of each one. And they were fed with a pulse wave, a very narrow pulse wave at about 150 hertz.
Plenty of harmonics.
And and then you use a slightly higher frequency for the female type voice.
Yeah.
And a lot of the samples that you hear, there's inflections going on and, frequency shifting going on. All of that is me twiddling with knobs and using the keyboard as a voltage control effect on the filters as well.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. So when did you perform, or did you have any sort of association with, or working with other musicians, or was there any collaborative sort of aspect to it when you first got going?
Not really. No, there was a couple of other colleagues at college at RMIT that were interested in building their own too, but I've completely lost track of those people now.
Did they end up doing it? Or?
Yeah, partially. I think no one got as far as I did, and I've still been adding to it. I've made those additions in the last few years, to be honest.
The new reverb. You've got the new reverb unit and the delay.
I saw the value in it. I didn't want to throw it away.
No.
By the way, the first keyboard I ever had, now here's one. The first keyboard was only 3.5 octaves. The one that's there now, no, it was only 2.5 octaves. The one that's there now is about a 4-octave keyboard.
Yeah.
So,
and that's a Kimber-Ellen. The brand name is called Kimber-Ellen. And
I don't know that one.
They were commercially available as a skeleton keyboard through JCar. I've actually still got the receipt. JCar in Sydney.
And what sounds did it reproduce on its own?
It's just a keyboard. No, it's just a blank mechanical device, and you had to buy the gold contact switches later and add them on. And there's a switch for the trigger pulse and a separate switch in the same physical structure for the voltage. So you tap into a resistor string to create the voltage.
So it lets you. It's just it's a control. The first. Go on.
Sorry, Frank. Well, I didn't have the money at the time to buy that keyboard. So as a student, I had a job. One of these vacation type roles. And I worked for LM Ericsson's up there in Broadmeadows in their factory. They were making relay sets back then. For telephone exchange equipment.
Oh, yes.
And there was a lot of broken and, disposed parts of the switches that were being thrown out, and I would just gather a few of those, and I collected enough to make up a set of switches for my own keyboard, and I carved each individual key, the white notes and the black notes, by hand out of bits of old wooden floorboard material.
And I Jesus, for a minute, I thought you were going to say you'd killed an elephant and you'd got the ivory. I'm sitting there going, the ivory. Please tell me you didn't kill an elephant.
No quite way,
to basics, huh?
Bit of tusk ivory.
I had woodworking skills, and I was in the shed every night after work, carving up another key.
Oh, gee.
Key carving.
And it was a terrible keyboard. You wouldn't want to play it, Frank. It was a shocker.
I can imagine. Yeah, even with the best efforts, it'd still be pretty crude.
I know it was. No action whatsoever. And anyway, but and I don't have it anymore. I was ashamed of it and finally threw it out. But that was my dedication to the art. And then I actually studied music some years later, Steve. So I have a bit of training.
Yes, you had a piano teacher called Sue, didn't you?
That's right.
Yeah, that's good. Really, I definitely there's your musical background comes through. I mean, your sense of timing and your melodic shape. I mean, it's love it.
Very much.
It's very well formed. It's great.
Well, this isn't the only record I've ever put together.
Oh, yeah?
I've got quite a lot of what you would classify as conventional pieces of music, jazz and...
Oh, really?
Have you?
And I've used the Roland keyboard, the one that's on the bottom there.
Yeah, that sounded nice.
Yeah, that's got the PCM recorded sounds in it. It's got a full orchestra, multi-timbral, all of that. And I've composed quite a few things with that in the conventional style.
I really hope you do. This is the beginning of something. Because I just think that what you've done here is just, it's mind-blowing. I mean, I
agree.
I've digested about 0.01% of it, and I've listened to this several times this week, And I'm in awe, really, of your vision, your commitment to it, your knowledge base. I mean, it just helps so much to actually build the equipment. You understand its potential, and you're in a better place than almost anyone, really, to engage with it and to create it.
And the more I learn about it, the more I'm in awe of it, really.
Oh, thank you, Frank.
No,
well, I'm sure Steve feels...
Absolutely.
I'm turning red now, Frank.
Good.
No, it's good. It's really important. You've got to celebrate these things because it's a labour of love. I mean, it's profound, really. I mean, these are complex machines,
exactly.
and you become emotionally involved. I mean, when I read your descriptions, they're very poetic and they're very philosophical. You've connected with it's a very personal vision, a lot, and I think that has to be celebrated. Now, we've got to reconfigure again in a minute, but what I'll do is I'll play that the title track, Fantasy and Reality. So we'll have a listen to that.
Oh yeah, that's that's the one I love.
Yeah, the one we're talking about before with the vocal sound.
Yeah,
so
this is really quite dense. It's got lots of things going on in there.
Yeah,
and although I do say the meaning of this piece of fantasy and reality, if there is one, is left to the imagination of the listener.
Yeah.
However, there is a meaning to it. There is a story. It actually tells a story.
Yep.
And I leave that one. I won't give that one away.
Okay, fair enough.
I think this is a job for more pills, actually.
Listen carefully. There will be a test afterwards.
Yes, there will indeed. Well, okay.
Specs, isn't it?
Yes, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Well, look, let's kick off with this, and I'll cut the Zoom feed, and then we'll reconfigure. I think I've got my handle on that. So thanks, Steve. We'll have a listen now to Fantasy and Reality. This is the title track of the CD. I'm Vk3sl, and we're testing here on 160 and also on VHF tonight.
Oh, such a sad ending.
Well,
such is life. Such is life.
what a journey.
Did you write that last piece? Did you write that last piece?
Yes,
it's lovely.
yes.
Very nice.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I'd love to hear some of the other stuff you wrote sometime.
It would be good.
Well, maybe not too distant future, we could have another session. Who knows?
Oh, absolutely. I enjoy that. That'd be great. Now, just Wayne, we're back on board. If you want to join us, you're more than welcome. Here we go. Mr. Wayne Admit. There we go. In the fold. So, yeah, wow, wonderful. Vocal sounds.
Now, Frank, there's an explosion in that one, Frank.
Yes, there is.
And I'll tell you how that's done.
Yes, please.
You might laugh your head off with this one.
Yeah.
The reverb springs. If you give them a good whack, they'll make an explosion sound.
Oh, really? Who would have thunk it, eh?
So what you do, you don't actually even have to have an input signal going into them. You just have to be very careful. I had to remove the two units that are sitting on top of the synthesizer rack. Otherwise, they would have fallen off. So I just grabbed the whole mechanics of the synthesizer and give it a good whack against the wall of the house. And the reverb springs. The reverb springs
exactly
rattle around in their cage and produce this massive noise that's really, really over the top.
Oh, there you go.
Incredible.
Microphonics.
Oh, boy.
You want to start hitting it with things, like striking it with a big crescent wrench, or maybe a Ford jack or something like that.
Well, Wayne,
that's what I have here.
One of my heroes.
There you go. See, Steve's got his.
That's how I make the equipment work in here. I have to give it a whack.
One of the exploits of one of my heroes, the keyboard hero, Keith Emerson.
Oh, yes. ELP.
His stage persona was quite remarkable. You know, he would use knives.
Well.
He would jam a knife into his keyboard, not on the keys, but between the gap between keys. And the knife would hit the timberwork underneath the keyboard, and it would stay there, but it would hold keys down. So he could, and he had this Hammond B3 organ, little Hammond B3 that had extra reinforcing on this instrument so that he could rock it around the stage. He could ride it like a rocking horse and
stab it like a serial killer.
And he would put chords in there, you know, just while it's playing so he could sing around. And he would lift it up on its one end and bring it over towards the speakers so you'd get feedback into the reverb springs, and that was another little effect. And he would oscillate it around and get different feedback sounds, you know. But one of the things he used to do was have the keyboard lay on his chest while he's on the floor. He's got the keyboard laid over on his chest. And he's reaching in around the back where the electronics are. It's amazing he never electrocuted himself. And he would grab the actual reverb springs and he would run his fingers over the wires of the reverb springs, creating all these extra little sounds.
Sounds quite kinky. My gosh.
Wow. You wouldn't want to invite him. You wouldn't want to invite him home to play on your Steinway Grand with his knives, would you?
Well, apparently the sound of the TARDIS taking off is a piano string in slow motion. It's a scraped piano string. Apparently.
Very interesting.
It's a sample from that.
That's a sample.
Because you get that ripple sound as you go across the little...
I've got it,
yeah, over the little notches.
I've just had to process it in my head and I've got it. It's makes complete sense.
But it's amazing. So yes, the extra musical components. I mean, people have done things like randomly burnt pianos, haven't they? And sort of recorded the. I remember
sounds like a certain amateur radio.
Well, they did that at the con when I was there. They got one of the poor old grand pianos and wheeled it outside and filled it up with petrol and burnt the thing. And as these strings snapped and the whole thing disintegrated, they sampled the sounds and then made. Use that as a compositional device.
Oh, Dave would have loved that.
Yeah, the last hurrah. Yes, that's right. That's a part of the tradition, isn't it? The destructive. Yeah. But
yes, well.
No, I think that's an amazing sort of journey, all those vocal sounds, and it really speaks to you, doesn't it, that piece? It's incredible. Dear.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's got all that.
It tells a story, and I'll leave it up to the imagination, but there is a story there, and it ends with a sad melody, so that sort of explains something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I got from it a kind of there's a portion there where you had an escalating argument between two people or a disagreement, and it got to a point where either they reached an agreement or they realised they had a laugh about it.
Yeah.
Now, is that accurate?
Partially.
Okay. The other thing I had was at the end, everyone got married and it was very happy and everyone was pissed.
No.
You're keeping notes, Wayne. You're writing notes. Amazing. I do say that the album's based on, inspired by love and the human condition. So really, the title track is really all about that, I suppose.
All about my wife's first thought, really, after finishing reading all this, is this sounds a bit autobiographical.
Well, it is.
Yeah, but
isn't all
music
in some respects?
But it's a vulnerable thing to do. I mean, you're wearing your heart on your sleeve. And
artists do that, don't they?
They certainly do. Absolutely, they do. And I think that has to be celebrated, because I think all too often we sort of sanitise things and we don't look at the raw emotions behind a musical experience. So I think that's...
We have a bit of a reading here, Steve. I see you there, and I'm just waiting for a reading.
I've got the notes here, and I've just been scanning them because,
See, the subject of the industrial complex is autobiographical.
Yeah. Right.
And I became a boiled frog a few times in my career.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I created those ideas back in the 1980s to produce that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't realised until last year, but the idea of it was in my head back in the 1980s.
I think the French have been boiling frogs for a long time. The French have been boiling frogs for an awful long time.
Is that how they cook them, is it?
Yeah, but it's a great metaphor for the reality behind this. I mean, it's a pretty confronting situation. I mean, it's not easy. And do you mind, Steve, if I read it out, or is it a bit too...
Yeah, go right ahead, Steve. Yeah, I'd like to hear someone else read it.
Yeah, it's called The Subject of the Industrial...
We need a reading. Yes.
Yeah, to have a reading here. So part one's anxiety neurosis, and it says this piece was inspired by memories of the stresses of work and comprises 3 parts. One is anxiety neurosis explains the use of industrial noises, the rigours of the subject it undergoes in the working environment. And part 1 ends in a screaming conclusion, triggering a nervous breakdown. In part 2, the subject attends therapy sessions to help the individual cope with the situation, and time and light is a manipulated message designed to offer comfort for the subject to consider. In the end, it's only time that will heal the subject's injuries, and it'll be the clear light of day that guides the subject to a better future. And part 3 is the boiled frog one, which Steve was just mentioning. It says the subject struggles to gain a measure of sanity and stability and slowly emerges with a coherence of thought, gradually managing to cope and put things into perspective and organisation. However, before the subject realises, the sensory overload was taking its toll without being noticed, and just like a frog in water that is slowly heated, the frog and the subject eventually boil in the stew of the overwhelming stress imposed by the industrial complex. Part 3 finishes with the ending of part 1. This could signify a return to therapy, the final conclusion, or a trigger to jump out of the boiling pot. Wow,
that's the best thing to do.
Absolutely, and it's a powerful story. I have to say,
Yeah.
I think we should hear it. I think we'll put it on, and
please.
Yeah, I think we'll. It's a longer track, but it's worth hearing, and I think it's quite remarkable.
This has got vocals in it too. This is real vocals. This one.
Yes, it does. It does.
Manipulated message of the
of the therapist. There, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
Hang on, I've got to get a fresh page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, look, I'll keep
this one. I'll give a bit of explanation as to the musical creation here.
Yeah.
The first part is actually ping-ponging in stereo, so it might not come quite the same in mono, but it's the industrial noises side of things, and I was having a lot of fun creating different industrial noises. And then it does end in this incredible screech, which is done with the delay line, just slowly changing the delay speed manually. That creates this screeching scream at the end.
Yeah.
And then there's the vocal track, which has a repeated message that I totally twisted all the words around to make it semi-humorous in a way. But that is also slowly but surely echo is introduced into that to the point where it becomes a completely muddled and echoed and distorted message. That was possibly not true about the therapy, but sometimes therapy could be like that.
I know. Yes,
for sure.
Part 3 took many takes to get right. I did make a version where, in terms of timing of the instrument playing, it was spot on, and I listened to it and I thought, it's flat, it's boring. It needs to create this effect where you're sort of stumbling and trying to get back on your feet. And the one that you hear is not perfect musically, but it creates that message that I was trying to get across.
Well, that's more important, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, and it's got a melody. I don't know have you ever heard this melody before, Steve? I came up with it on the spot.
Okay, I can't recall.
And I think it's original. I quite like the melody.
Sure.
And this is where I flick the switches on the sequencer to actually begin the.
Oh no. We might have an internet dropout here because we've had some. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve and Wayne and Frank. Yep, we've had another internet dropout. It happened partway through the other piece as well. What we'll do is we'll cut to the chase. We'll have a listen to this work, and then hopefully things will settle down. In the event that it doesn't, we'll just have to address that at the end. But we'll take this opportunity to play this remarkably personal creation from Mr. Bentley. It's the subject of the industrial complex in 3 parts. Part 1 is anxiety neurosis, Part 2 time and light, and Part 3 is the boiled frog. This is Vk3sl testing.
Find a comfortable position and begin to breathe deeply and evenly, and in your own time, by the power of your mind, by the state of consciousness. Think of light and begin to breathe light deeply and evenly, and begin to breathe time, breathe light and time deeply and evenly. And as you drift down, 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 think of the pulse of time, drift, 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 by the power of your mind, by the state of consciousness, drift down, drift down, drift down, drift in time, drift into light by the power of your mind. Find a comfortable position and begin to breathe deeply and evenly, and in your own time, by the power of your mind, by the state of consciousness, think of light and begin to breathe light deeply and evenly, and begin to breathe time, breathe light and time deeply and evenly. And as you drift down, 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 think of the pulse of time, drift, 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 by the power of your mind, by the state of consciousness, drift down, drift down, drift down, drift in time, drift into light by the power of your mind. Find a comfortable position and begin to breathe deeply and evenly, and in your own time, by the power of your mind, by the state of consciousness, think of light and begin to breathe light deeply and evenly, and begin to breathe time, breathe light, time, deeply and evenly. And as you drift down, think of the pulse of time, drift, 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 by the power of your mind, by the state of consciousness, drift down, drift, down, drift, drift in time, drift into light by the power of your mind.
that is so draining.
Yeah. Incredible.
It was a roller coaster.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
like the sort of semi-optimistic melody at the end?
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. Yes.
I think it's really effective. It's quite profound, actually. It's.
I'm glad you think of that.
No, it really is. It's a piece that has very deep resonances. I think for a lot of people can connect with that.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Totally.
No, wow. I just feel quite overwhelmed. Yeah, it and just sort of hearing the context and the background to the whole, your approach to it too. Wow. Yeah,
it's totally honest, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I admire about it so much.
I know.
It's really powerful. That's the most powerful music, is music that cuts to the chase, is prescient.
I'm glad you get it, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely,
totally.
we do. And
totally.
I think there's quite a deep resonance for a lot of us. I'll just got to bring Wayne back in. Anyhow.
Wayne.
Yeah, no,
there's something in there for many of us, I think. Not the whole story, but bits and pieces.
Oh, definitely, and just the narrative and the way it's framed. Oh, yeah, wow, and the way the theme comes back.
Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah,
you couldn't do that with just, say, a piano solo. That's the other thing about the synthesizer. You got all these expressions and colours and textures that you can work with.
Yeah, we can create epic stories, and that's the thing. You've got sound worlds that are unique, and that's the wonderful thing, is the creating sounds that are not, otherwise.
You obviously love sound for its own sake, as we do, Steve.
Oh, absolutely, Frank. Yeah.
Oh,
absolutely. I mean, I sort of see sounds, that synesthesia stuff.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've heard of it.
Yeah.
Someone said that a synthesizer was like a box of melted crayons.
Yeah.
And you just pick out chunks of dried crayon, and then you create with that, rather than pick the crayon out and draw. So,
yeah, that's a really good analogy, Wayne. It makes
it is. Yeah.
I think that's one of the best I've heard. Yeah, it has that sort of
it is
that amalgam. Yeah. The synesthesia is a really interesting one, isn't it? That people can feel a sense of taste. I think, Frank, have you got your radio on the background there?
Sorry, my fault. I do that a lot. Hold on. There we go.
Might have been me too.
No, it wasn't you.
That's
it was
fine.
me.
But that experience of sort of sensory interconnection, and I know Scriabin used to see bright lights when he heard sounds all the time, and
really?
He'd just see them in his head, and which is quite fascinating. And
some of the shapes and patterns and colours that I see are abstract. They're not of anything, It's hard to describe them. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, that's
sure.
True. It's a wonderful thing, because I think all our sort of perceptive, our senses are all in the same part of the brain. And so, but Frank, didn't you mention that you were a part of an experiment where your visual cortex, your visual part of your brain activated when you listen to sound? Wasn't there?
That's what happens, Steve. I took part in a test before a young woman who was doing her PhD on brain plasticity.
Yeah.
Back before it was sort of really everyday, commonly accepted thing.
Yeah.
And she had this theory that people who had lost their sight either at birth or didn't have any sight, or else lost it very early, might have their visual cortex kind of hijacked by their auditory sense. Mm-hmm. So she asked for volunteers, and I was happy to do it. She's a very nice young woman, for one thing.
Yeah.
I was very interested in what she'd find as well.
Yeah.
And as those of us who went in for it did, and so you go to an MRI, stick your head in an MRI machine, and you are confronted with two they play two tones which are very close together in frequency, and you have to nominate the higher of the two.
Right.
And they're so close that it is really, you're really working hard to decide which ones. And my visual cortex lit up.
Wow, how interesting!
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Was that the same with the other rhyme people as well participating?
Yes. Not, I don't think all of them, but nearly all of them.
Right.
And to varying degrees, Steve.
How about that?
The ones who were very acute. There was only one who was more sensitive to it than I was, and she is a young, brilliant musician.
Right.
And she has her licentiate, and she's a BCom, and everything, but a must-back, I should say. Yeah. And she was the only one. But I think all of them to some degree did, Steve. Yes.
Yeah. How interesting! Absolutely fascinating. I just find that staggering.
I have a question for the creative people. Does anyone hear vivid dream?
Anyone do what?
Have vivid dreams.
I have hugely vivid
dreaming, where you have dreams that are very vivid and full of detail and all this.
Oh, totally.
All the time, Wayne. All the time.
All the time. And
I used to. Not so much now. I think my brain is sort of pretty much fried.
No, don't say that.
No. Look, I used to keep a dream diary, or I used to keep a tape recorder because I used to have such vivid dreams, and I'd read them out, and just sort of annotate them, and but not so much recently. I think I have a very fragmented sleep, and it's probably a product of damage control or something, but I have in the past had episodes I've had exceptionally vivid dreams, where almost sort of like scary vivid, like parallel reality type dreams.
Yeah,
so, No, it's something that I have, and I look at other people, and what you're looking for is the type of mind, and what we have here are creative minds. I'm not putting myself in that category, but you probably are creative people. We have musicians, we have all that sort of stuff. And it seems to be a common theme throughout.
I have very, very vivid dreams, and I used to have a lot of flying dreams where I could fly.
I love those.
They are the best dreams. They're supposed to be very erotic dreams often, Wayne. But unfortunately, I don't have them much now. What I always have had, and
we can go there if you want.
I'm ready. We have. There is a wonderful thing that you can have occasionally called a lucid dream. Which is where you're in a dream state, and you become aware that you're in a dream state, and yet usually when that happens, you wake up. I usually wake up as soon as I know I'm dreaming. Yes, but occasionally you don't, and you can take control of the dream, and it becomes a sort of wish fulfillment time.
Yeah,
and I won't go into what one wishes for.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting at a personal level to contemplate what you do.
Well, some people get a sort of paralysis in that state, don't they? Isn't there
I think that's always the case, that anybody who is sleeping and hasn't woken up properly can't move. Yeah. Because the body does that as a self-defense mechanism, so that you can't go sleepwalking and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yes, interesting. It's really interesting, that state.
But this lucid dreaming is terrific if you can do it. And there are people who say they can control it, know how to bring it on.
Yeah, I reckon I have a bit of that, because every day now, my way of coping with my industrial complex, the domestic and other, every industrial complex is every day now, and I do it religiously without a day. I cannot miss a day. I go and sit in the car and have a 15-minute cat nap.
Yes, you do. That's right.
And I'm completely shut down, but I'm sort of aware that I'm shut down.
Yeah,
and it's really weird.
Part of you is still monitoring what's happening.
Yes, there's something still monitoring, but I'm in a complete trance.
As long as you don't suddenly wake up in St Kilda or something like that.
Well, yes,
how did I get here?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's a fear. But it's a weird one.
I've been to parties like that.
Yes.
I can fully support that. It's a valuable tool. The 20-minute nap, I'd lay down for 10 minutes and think, and then I'd close my eyes and I'd sleep for exactly 20 minutes.
Wow.
And then I'd be fully refreshed for the afternoon. I could do another 10 hours.
That's fantastic, Wayne. The corollary of that is that if you sleep a bit too long, you feel like absolute crap. Because it's usually it's 20 minutes maximum for me. I can but if I rest for 30 minutes or more, I move into a different cycle, and then I'm feeling I'm so sleepy I can barely operate. So it sort of picks up, but it's interesting how it's quite particular to a certain mode of rest, I think.
Yes. It must just suit.
But if I didn't do that, I had a shocking time at work a few years ago, and I just did it as a self-protection, and it was the thing that saved me, because I reckon I would have just completely fallen down the hole.
Go.
I would have.
Yeah.
So, Steve, how would you interpret one of these lucid dreams with your sin?
I think he's asked me.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I did actually.
Well, I'd have a go. And think of something interesting.
Yeah. Have you ever had one, Wayne? Have you ever had one?
I have them. I could have one now. Close my eyes and I could have one right now. I have the most amazing dreams. They're stunning.
Yeah, wow. And that's without taking anything?
Nothing at all.
Yeah.
But they're an amalgam of experience. And the more experience you have over the years, the more you have in your dream world to dream upon.
True
and
enough. Then
the more your subconscious or your id or psyche, whatever it is, has to work with. Yeah. So the more it can throw back at you. And if it's feeling nasty, it can throw some pretty nasty stuff back. Like swimming in a pool full of cannibals.
Whoa.
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Gosh.
But it also can reward you at times with, as you mentioned, things like flying. I always fly in New Zealand. Whenever I'm flying, I'm in New Zealand.
Oh, they have very good air regulations there. That's probably what it is.
Awesome airspace control and all that sort of stuff. It's really good. I was in New Zealand. I was on this same beach, which I remember really well, and it's just this enormous long beach, and I'm always flying along that beach going, well, this is a good day. This is a good day.
It's when I do it lucidly, I'm constantly sort of anxious that I'm going to wake up, and I've got to sort of try and keep the lid on it and say, now, what have I got to do not to wake up? And that of itself can sort of bring you to a wake up. So it's a bit of a mind control thing. Yeah. But it's wonderful when you can do it and be doing something that you like to do, or that you would wish to do.
Fellas, I hope you don't mind, but at some point I need to go and get some sleep.
Yeah, look, totally understand. No, it's getting to that.
Ourselves.
Well, look, it's been absolutely fantastic. Can we? What I'll do is I'll write out with one of your magnum opuses, which is the Great Nebula, and we'll just we'll terminate the call and just let this sort of finish off the program. And so, if you've got any, I mean, I know that. Cosmic influence is very strong for you, Steve, and you've got some fabulous visions here. Or maybe I'll just quickly read it out, if you don't mind.
Yes.
And then
go right ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So this is the Great Nebula.
Yeah.
And this is one that Steve wrote in October last year. It says, picture yourself on a deep space voyage travelling faster than the speed of light and passing through a nebula. There are many mysterious encounters along the way and many dangers to avoid. Science fiction movies often portray a nebula as a dangerous region within the vastness of space. Excessive levels of radiation may disable operations of the spacecraft or cause physical or mental harm to the human occupants in the ship. Yet a nebula is a beautiful, complex, colourful and compact object in space when viewed from a distance. Many nebula are stellar nurseries where stars are born. In doing so, illuminate the surrounding clouds of dust and gaseous mixtures. These regions of space occupy thousands of light years in size, and if one was actually able to travel into a nebula, the immediate region of space would not look that much different to what we see around our own planet Earth, for we are all within our own great nebula. Wow.
Yes.
Beautiful words.
Lovely words.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
Very poetic.
Well, that's very true, you know. It's actually been shown that there is a nebula around our Milky Way galaxy, the
So
part
there is.
where our solar system is.
Wow.
So if you were to look at our solar system from a great distance away, you would see this gaseous cloud around our area of space.
Wow.
Steve, can I just ask you, do you ever, you're writing so beautifully there, do you ever write prose or poetry, you know, just for the sake of writing down your thoughts?
I've got a book full of it in my house here, Frank.
Have you?
Oh, good on you.
Steve,
like an emotional diary, I suppose.
Oh, marvellous. That's really
Yes, I
moving.
do.
You should do a showing.
Yes.
You should do a gallery showing with pieces of this and then the music playing in the background.
You got
and
it,
then,
Wayne.
Yeah.
all that bits in a little place somewhere in what's Lygon Street? Brand Chapel Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of those little galleries.
Yeah.
We can all go
Chapel off
there.
Chapel.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said for
Yeah.
expressing oneself, and I think you've done wonderful things. Now we're going to time out, unfortunately, in less than a minute, so we'll have to wind up, fellas. And look, thank you for all of you, and for being a part of this, and we'll look forward to another session.
Yeah.
And a very special.
Can I just say
Steve.
very quickly, thank you very much, Steve, and Wayne, come on more often.
Yeah, please.
I will. Thank you, and Steve and Frank. It's been lovely to be here.
Yeah,
It's been great fun, fellas.
It's great to
Much
catch up.
appreciated.
Thank you, Steve.
So we look forward to it. I'll continue with missions out throughout the next few days. Being with the lockdown, we'll do the afternoon session as per usual. So thanks, everyone, and all the best, gentlemen. It's been an absolute pleasure. We'll now finish off, actually, with the Great Nebula.
Cheers.
Bye.
Vk3YJQ clear.
It's all.
Vk3YJQ, clear.
VK3SL saying cheers for now.